Welcome back. I'm Maya, your training host with AQUA Real Estate. Today, we finish off NWMLS Form 17, Seller Property Disclosure Form. Starting off, we dive into the buyer's rights pertaining to the seller disclosure form. Secondly, we cover the 3 signature spots on page 6 and what they do. Then, we will wrap up discussing the procedure if a buyer were to rescind their offer. As I mentioned in the previous video, the seller disclosure form is required by law. The state gives the buyer the power to rescind their contract based on the disclosure form. Call it a cooling off period, if you will. The buyer has a right to review the disclosure form and may choose to rescind their offer within 3 days of receiving a fully complete copy of Form 17. The 3-day cooling off period begins the day the disclosure was delivered to the buyer's broker. Notice I said delivered. That does not mean signed. If the buyer's broker takes a couple days to get it signed, the clock will not begin from that point. It began once the listing broker delivered it to the buyer's broker. So be sure to always document the date the disclosure was sent if you are the listing broker. While most listing brokers have Form 17 uploaded in the NLS supplements for the buyer to attach with an offer, it's not a requirement to be in the MLS supplements in order to list the seller's property. A broker may list a property without it, and yes, you can make an offer and go under contract without the disclosure form. It just means the clock will not start until a fully completed disclosure form has been delivered to you. My last talking point is, if the seller was to alter the disclosure form in any way after a buyer is under contract, the 3-day right of rescission window will restart once the listing broker delivers an updated copy of the disclosure form to the buyer. Moving on, let's discuss page 6 of the disclosure form. Page 6 of the disclosure form is the only page in the document that a buyer must sign. But there are 3 choices a buyer could choose from when signing. Does the buyer sign them all? Or does the buyer sign just one? If so, which one? Let's talk about that. Choosing which line to sign depends on a case-by-case basis. Are your clients conservative, or are they willing to take on some risk in order to make their offer competitive? These are the questions you must ask to yourself and your buyers when choosing which line to sign. The first line is simple. The buyer would sign line 1 to acknowledge that they have received the seller disclosure form. Buyers signing line 1 only is the most common way you see disclosure forms signed by buyers. It is the most conservative of all the choices and retains the right of rescission in the first 3 days. The second line is for buyers that want to increase the strength of their offer. You most likely will encounter this when a house might have other competitive offers. Once line 2 has been signed, the buyer has not only waived the 3-day rescission period, but the buyer has also waived the right to use this disclosure form as a means to rescind their offer later should they find any errors. Line 3 takes it a step further and waives the buyer's right to rescind their offer even if the disclosure is incomplete. Most buyers will likely never rescind their offer because of a disclosure issue in the 3-day window, usually because there are other contingencies they can use such as inspection or title. But when a buyer signs line 2 or 3, they are also giving up a commonly used out that a savvy buyer or buyer broker might use to get out of contract 20 or 30 days into the agreement. Seller disclosure forms are the most utilized way buyer brokers use to help their clients get out of deals late in the process, without penalty of losing the buyer's earnest money. Usually due to inaccurate or incomplete disclosure forms from oversights such as unchecked boxes for a question or missing explanations for questions marked yes that have asterisks. So please be aware that this can happen. And if you are a listing broker, take extra care when reviewing your seller's disclosure form. An airtight disclosure form mitigates the chances of something like this happening to you. And now our final topic of the disclosure form, buyer rescissions. It's a proven fact, buyers change their minds on a whim. Trust me, all brokers experience this at least once. When a buyer decides to call it quits on a deal for good, and gives you instructions to rescind the agreement based on the seller disclosure form. You will need to prepare a Form 90A. Form 90A is a breeze. Check the corresponding box for the reason of the rescission. Checkmark the first box on the form if your buyer has read the disclosure form and disapproves before the 3-day cooling-off period. If seller has never been delivered the disclosure, the buyer can rescind the agreement anytime. Checkmark the second box on the form. The option that savvy brokers use is the third checkbox. Check this if the disclosure has been delivered but is not complete. Because this is a rescission, the seller's signature is not needed. Once the buyer has signed, provide the notice to the listing broker.
Be sure to check out our other great training videos inside AQUA University. Hey there, are you watching our training videos but not yet an AQUA agent? We would love to have you. Our 100% commission model, world-class training systems, technology and marketing make AQUA the coolest and fastest growing brokerage in the Northwest. Go to our website, getaqua.com/careers to learn more. Join the club.